Hello everybody, welcome to Sin City Living. We are going over the how to deal dice all over again, starting from the very beginning, as in a dice student that just walked into the school, just signed up, and they are starting on dice. They've never seen a dice table before in their lives. So typically we would start out with the tour of the table. So I don't have a full table, although I do have 8 feet worth of table. I'm not going to run the camera all the way around everything, but you've got 2 sides of the table and they mirror. This side, it's called third base. Then the other side, which is over there, it's called second base. And then you've got the stick person right there. A stick person is in charge of all those bets and the dice. And then the base dealer, third base, I'm in charge of these bets. Second base dealer over there is in charge of those bets. Sitting in between would be the box if the table has a box person. Now, wherever you are on the table, the hand that is closest to the box is your inside hand. It's inside of the table. The hand that is closest to the players is your outside hand. The biggest thing I see dice students do through the first week or 2 of the course is they have a tendency to always say left and right. Left hand, right hand. No. It's always inside and outside hands, because the moves are all dependent upon which side of the table you were on as far as what hand you use. There is no rule, there is nothing that you do that is you always use your left hand or you always use your right hand. There is you always use your inside hand or you always use your outside hand. Outside hand, inside hand. Okay? Next, and this will be a real brief overview because we'll go more into it a little bit later, but the table curves. You have your stick person there, and then you have the slots for all the checks, and they come around and then they curve all the way around to next to the dealer. Right? Most tables have 10 slots for chips, even though we only allow 8 players. So generally, where that curve is, right where that curve is, there's a piece of wood, because there's 2 sets of two slots for the chips on either side of that curve. We call that the hook. If it's on this side towards the stick person, it's the bottom hook, and on this side towards the base person, it's the top hook. Some dealers will also say, if they're talking to the stick person, they'll say your hook or my hook, which also gets the point across which part of the hook they are on. That will actually matter when we get to positioning of the bets. It doesn't really matter for right now. Now, a lot of instructors will say that you position bets based on where the person's chips are. That's usually the best way to do it, because some players will sit there and they'll sway as they're playing. They bounce back and forth, foot to foot, or kind of move around. So it's a good rule of thumb to put their chips or put their bets where their chips are, but some players also hold their checks in their hand the entire time. So you just do the best you can. Do the best you can, just make sure it makes sense. Now, for craps, it all starts with these right here. These right here. The dice. And there's always 5 or 6 dice. I've yet to see a craps table that had 4 dice. There's always 5 or 6 dice. There's always extra dice for a couple of reasons. Reason 1, in case dice go off the table, we've got other dice that we can use so we don't stop the game while we go find the dice. And reason number 2, highly superstitious game. A lot of players like to pick their dice. They like to have choices. So they have 5 or 6 dice to choose from when they start their roll. The game itself runs off of 2 dice. 2 dice. So numbers between 2 to 12. So with these dice, standard 6-sided dice, there are 36 combinations of the dice. And this is where all the payouts come from. All the payouts and all the odds all stem from 36 combinations of the dice. It's one of the ways that craps fools people. For instance, right here, got all these numbers here. 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 7 numbers. There's only 4 numbers that aren't there, so people are like, man, I can't miss right there. 36 combinations of the dice, only 16 of them are in here. It's one of the ways that craps fools the players. Combinations of the dice. Anything that is a pair, there's only one possible way for it to come. 1 in 36 chance. So if you've got aces, a hard 4, and it's hard if it's a pair. If it was a 3-1, it'd be an easy 4. Hard 6, hard 8, hard 10, and a 12. Every one of those, there's only one way out of the 36 ways that it can come. All right, we call that high side when we get to center action bets, and that's going to be much further along in this course. So anything that's a pair, there's only one possible way for it to come. Anything that is not a pair, let's look at this easy 8 right here. All right, there's actually 2 ways for this to come. And this is another thing that fools a lot of players. They think there's only one way for this to come. That is not true, because it can come 3-5 or it can come 5-3. That is 2 different ways for the dice to land to get to the same number. 3-5, 5-3. 2 different ways. Same number, 2 different ways. So these are what we also call low side. So basically, if it's not a pair, there's 2 ways for it to come. If it is a pair, there's only one way for it to come. And that is where all the payouts come from craps. So let's go to the most basic core part of the game. So you've got your puck, right? The puck stays right over here when it says off. When it says off, that means really the game has not started yet. We have what we call a come out roll, right? Now, a lot of people think the off and the on refers to the point. It actually doesn't. Back in the day, these were just black and white. Had nothing to do with the point because it gets moved to wherever the point is. The off and on dealt with the bets, right? And whether or not the bets were off or on. And again, we will cover that in depth further on in the course when we actually get to those bets. So the game itself, it starts off with this puck off. We have a new shooter, so they will get all the dice. They get to pick their 2 dice. And then they would throw them across the table. We play full court, so they have to throw them across the table, whichever side they're on, and they have to rebound off the back wall. That ensures a fair roll for everybody. Whatever it lands on, if it lands on one of these numbers, we will mark that point, and the game has now started. If it's not one of these 6 numbers, then it's a win or loss condition, but it does not end that shooter's roll. Even if they lose their bet, it does not end that shooter's roll. They're still shooting because they haven't even started the game yet. So it's got to be one of these numbers to start the game, to set the point. Anything else is a win-loss condition. Now, in order to shoot, they have to have, I'm going to go with, now we'll stick with red. They have to have either a pass line or a dump pass, but we're going to start with pass line. We're only going to worry about pass line right now. So, player has a pass line bet. One of these numbers roll. We mark the point. And now, in order for them to get paid there, they have to roll the number that is marked. That is the win. If they roll that number, in this case if it was an 8, if they rolled an 8, they would get paid even money on the pass line. The point would turn off. And we're in a come out roll all over again. Once again, we are starting the game. Only we're not at a new shooter. It's the same shooter because they hit a winner, so they're going to get the same 2 dice. If they want to get all the dice, they can. But we're just going to give them the same 2 dice. They can collect up their winnings. They leave a pass line bet down. Now, like I said, if it's not one of these 6 numbers, it's a win or loss condition. Win or lose. So 4, 5, 6, 8, 9 sets the point. 2, 3, or 12. 2, 3, or 12 are crap numbers. Those are the crap numbers. That's why when a 7 out occurs and players say, oh, they crapped out, that's not true in any way, shape, or form because 7 is not a crap number. 2, 3, and 12 are crap numbers. On a come out roll, 2, 3, or 12, this pass line loses. Then they'll have to put a new bet down and keep shooting. Because again, they lost their money, not their turn, so they're still shooting. If a 7 or an 11 roll, they win. They'll get paid. Always even money in the pass line. They'll collect up their winnings, and they keep going. So 2, 3, or 12, a crap, they lose, and they have to put a new bet down. 7 or 11, they win. They can collect their winnings, and they keep going. Now, for those of you guys that are doing the math on that, 7 or 11 wins. Well, with these 36 combinations of the dice, there are 6 ways for a 7 to roll, and there are 2 ways for an 11 to roll. So 8 of the 36 combinations of the dice, they'll win on that pass line. 2, 3, or 12, they lose. That's 4 combinations. That means they're a 2-to-1 favorite to win on the pass line during a come-out roll. During a come-out roll and during a come-out roll only. Now, once they establish a point, once this is on and the point is established, the only thing that affects that pass line bet is either the point or a 7. A 7 is what loses, and we move on to the next shooter. If they roll their point, they win. Anything else rolls, it does not affect that pass line. They may have other bets, but once there's a point, 2, 3, or 12 are now meaningless. They don't lose. An 11 is now meaningless. It doesn't win. A 7, however, will lose. A 7 will lose. Now, why is 7 the losing number? Well, let's go over real fast. Let's go over the combinations of the dice. So 36 combinations of the dice. You notice it goes from 6 to 8, because 7 is obviously not a point. So in my head, I always pictured 7 as just super skinny and stuck in between here, right? So we have 6 ways for the 7 to, actually, let me do it this way. We have 6 ways for a 7 to roll. For a 6, how many combinations are there? Well, you've got your hard 6, your 3-3, that's one combination. Then you've got your 5-1. Since we know that's not a pair, that means there's 2 ways for it to come. Then we've got our 4-2, also not a pair. That means there's 2 ways for it to come. So for a 6 to roll, there are 5 combinations. Same with an 8. So for a 9, there are 4 combinations. Same with a 5. For a 10, there are 3 combinations. Same for a 4. Now, following along with this logic that you might be spotting, can anybody guess how many combinations there are for an 11 or for a 3? I always just extend it out. 2. 2 combinations for an 11, 2 combinations for a 3. And we already covered the fact that a 12 and a 2 are pairs, which means there's only 1 combination. So, why is the 7 the one that loses? Well, the most combinations of the dice. It is the most likely number to roll. So it's going to lose, or that's what's going to end the game. Once there's a point established, the player is no longer the favorite. When they're on a come-out roll, again, 2-to-1 favorite to win. But once the point is established, they are no longer the favorite. Now, if they roll a 6, or they roll whatever the point may be, like let's say we're on the come-out roll. Right? So they roll an 8. So we set an 8. So now 2, 3, and 12 no longer matter, and neither does an 11. But the 7, however, instead of being a winner, now would lose over there. So now the only things that matter is 8 or 7. So they keep rolling. A 5 does nothing, and a 7. So 7 out, they lose. Turn off the point. And we go to a new shooter. They get all the dice. They get to select again. This right here is the absolute core, very, 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 very first part of dealing craps. So the first thing that we will tell people, now when you were paying and when you were collecting, you always do it from closest to you around to the stick person. Always start closest to you around to the stick person. And the reason for that is, let's say we're on a come-out roll, or no, let's say we were on that 8 and the 7 out came. Well, if I reach all the way over here, I am visually blocking these bets right here from the view of the box person. And if I'm not paying attention, maybe the stick person's talking to me, or I'm talking to this player, and I'm not paying close enough attention, because we're used to people reaching in to start putting their new bets down. So I'm not paying attention, and I don't notice that this player over here picks up their bet. Nobody else saw it either because I'm blocking them. So I have to start closest to me and sweep around. Always want to use 2 hands. 2-handed dealer is always better than a 1-handed dealer. Same thing if I'm paying. If I reach over here to pay first, what's to say that this player doesn't cap their bet? So instead, I come around this way and pay from closest to me all the way around to the base dealer. So the first thing that we tell students as they're learning is to learn the most basic part of the game, set up 3 or 4 pass line bets, and roll them out. So with an 8, there we go. Now we're going to roll. 5 does nothing. 6 does nothing. 7 out. And we have the students run this a few times, usually 10-15 minutes per student. Usually have a couple other students watching them, because what it really gets them used to, it really gets you used to a real quick analysis of knowing 2, 3, and 12 lose, 7, 11 win, and win. See, a lot of them get real confused once there's a point and say 2 rolls, they start reaching because they want to take it. But it's only on the come out roll. Same thing with 11. Or we'll have a 7 roll during a come out roll and they'll start taking them because they don't have that habit set. So that's the first thing you want to do, is you want to set that basic drill in place first before we even get into the next more important thing. So before we get into the next add-on to the pass line and the first part that starts getting a little confusing for people, I want to go over core skills and core setups of craps. So the first thing is, and I'm glad I've got the camera set so you can almost see, back behind the numbers will be what we call our working stacks of checks. Closest to the outside, lowest denomination. Highest denomination always closest to the box, and they go in order, which is again why you cannot go left, right, because over here I've got them set up this way because this is my outside hand, so my outside hand is always going to be the direction where the lowest denomination is. But on the other side of the table, all this flips, it all flips around, which is again why no left, right with craps. And you have to be ambidextrous, at least when it comes to payouts. So you've got your working stacks. Generally, we'll teach to follow these lines for your working stacks. Now, when you get a little bit more advanced, you're going to switch them out a little bit, especially you get into places with higher denominations where you may have 7 or 8 sets of working stacks. You might go all the way out to the 5,000s or 10,000s, so you're going to have a whole lot more. So you won't necessarily be following the lines, but to begin with, we teach you to follow the lines because you need to leave enough space for the dice to land without being canted on 2 different stacks, right? So eventually you might have them a little bit closer. Now, you cannot have a stack out if you don't have the lower denomination out. Like I can't have just this out. Have to have my aces out. Now, once you've been dealing for a long time and you're at a tier 3, tier 4 casino where you might be on, say, a reserve game with a $500 minimum bet or something like that, you may not have your aces out because not a single bet anywhere is going to deal with the aces. But for the most part, you can't have a stack out if you don't have the lower stacks out first. So let's talk about the three of the core things, 3 of the core skills or core knowledge points with craps, things that you must be able to do. The first one takes a whole lot of practice. So when you first start craps, we teach this day 1, and we tell people you need to practice this every single day. And of course they don't, and then when they run into my midterm exams in the middle of the course, then they're screwed and have to spend a week and a half working on it. And that is drop cutting. Drop cutting. Drop cutting is unique to dice. There's something very similar they'll do in roulette, but drop cutting itself, its mechanics are unique to dice. In blackjack, you're sizing into everything. Now, it's assumed by the time you come to craps that you already know how to size in properly. If you don't, what are you doing at craps? Learn your basic, absolute core basic dealing skills first, then start working on craps. But it's assumed by the time you get to craps, you already know how to size in because you've tested out through blackjack. Drop cutting is where we do exactly what it sounds like. We cut out and we drop a set number of checks. Now, it's not put it on the table and peel off part of the stack. Call that the peel off. And I know a few. I know one long-term dealer that does this, and he gets made fun of mercilessly. I know of 4 or 5 other dealers that do it, but they are brand new dealers, and they're considered extraordinarily weak because, well, many reasons, but that is one of the reasons. Because again, this is something that every dealer should know how to do once they come out of the craps class. Drop cutting, they are in the air. We separate out how much we need, and then we, well, drop it. Pretty easy. If I need 2 checks, then I'm going to set out 2 and I'm going to drop it. I'm not going to turn my hand sideways and look at my hand. I'm just going to drop out 2. If I need 3, I'm going to drop out 3. If I need 4, I'm going to drop out 4. This takes a lot of practice because you have to teach your fingers how to feel it. If you turn your hand sideways and look, you will never learn how to drop cut. You have to cut them out wrong a whole bunch of times before your fingers start feeling it. If you always look, your eyes override that sense of touch and you will never learn how to drop cut. Now, there's multiple ways to drop cut. The way I do it is I separate out, I lift off what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for 3 here. So I have cut out 3 checks. It's my middle finger that is feeling the fact that there are 3 checks. Not my thumb, it's my middle finger. And then from here, I just drop it down. Now, there are other dealers that will do it, and this is very, very difficult for me to do. Other dealers will use their thumb and they roll them out the back.
T does that.
They roll them out the back. It's almost 50-50 on dealers that do this. Either rolling it out the back or lifting and dropping. There are a rare few dealers that do what I call the pushback, where they push the stack back and then drop it down. To be honest, I actually do that when I drop 5. I push the stack back because my finger actually isn't able to feel 5. 5 is where I mess it up the most. I tend to drop 4 or 6. And it's weird because I can feel 4, but if I'm trying to cut 5, I may not notice that I have 4. But I do the pushback mostly because instead of feeling it, I've just kind of become used to how far up my finger needs to go to push to get 5. And look at that, it's 4. But most either lift like this or roll it out the back. A select few push. It does not matter which one you do. Whatever is most comfortable for your hands. Figure out which one. I was showing all 3 methods. The way I do it is just most comfortable for my hands and just the way that I end up doing it. I'm slowly trying to teach myself to roll it off the back, but I just have difficulty with it. Now, a lot of women dealers that have nails roll it out the back because your fingernail will get in the way. If you have now, casinos most casinos have a policy on how long the nails can be. Usually like a 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch is actually long enough that if you're trying to do the lift or the push, your fingernail will get in the way. So most of the women I know that have their nails done as dealers do the roll off, the thumb roll off the back. But I also know quite a few female dealers that always have their nails cut super, super short, so they do either one. So drop cutting. Now the next one, and that's something you're just gonna have to practice and practice and practice and practice. I still practice to this day. The next one is picking. Picking is something that we do when we need 5 or less checks. You never pick 6 because that's an interception and that's not good. But never pick 6 or more. Always 5 or less. If we need 5 or less checks, we pick it. And by picking, what we mean with that is we just grab however many we need. If I need 3 checks, if I need 3 red chips, I'm just going to grab 3 red chips. If I need 2, I'm just going to grab 2. It's to the point where I don't even need to think about it. 4, got 4. 1, pretty easy. 3,
You can't grab
pretty
one.
easy. Now, what we teach people, this is the drill that you want to do. You want to get yourself your stack of red and your stack of white, and you're going to set it up this way. And you're going to do in sets of 7. You're going to do 7, 14, 21, and 28. And you're going to cut out that denomination only using red and white. You're going to cut it out 20 times per number per side. So I would cut out $7, then I would cut out 14, then I would cut out 21. And then the hardest one is the 28 because you have to pick 5. Then I would cut out the 28. And then I would do it again. Do it again, do it again, do it again. Now you can either do 7 20 times and then do 14 20 times, 21 20 times, or you can do all 4, then 20 times. After you have done it 20 times, switch your stacks. Because again, depends on what side of the table you were on. So you have to be used to dealing with both hands. That is actually one of my bigger weaknesses right now. I can deal either side of the table, any side of the table. I actually strongly prefer to be on this side of the table because I've dealt on this side of the table probably 90% of my shifts. So some of the tricks that I do, my fingers don't want to do them on the other side, so I'm the tiniest bit slower because I can't do some of my shortcuts. But when you run this drill, you run it both hands 20 times per number, and this is not something you do once, it's something you do repeatedly until you can pick without even thinking about it. Now, again, don't turn your hand sideways. If you turn your hand sideways, you will never learn how to pick. I know people that still cannot pick. Okay, and the last two core things that dice dealers must know. First one is differences between blackjack and craps. Biggest thing, how we cut checks out. How we cut checks out. Now I've got Amy sitting here watching, so she can correct me when I talk about the blackjack side of things. But I want to say for blackjack, let's say we needed to cut out $45, right, in red. For blackjack, it would be 5 and 4.
Yeah.
Because everything is in stacks of 5.
Depending on where you deal.
Right. Most places it's going to be 5 and 4. It's going to be how you're going to be taught, because the dealing schools are going to teach what is predominant at the majority of places. And casinos know that they need to fine tune if someone's straight out of dealing school. Occasionally there are dealing schools that actually have close connections to certain casinos, so they will specifically teach their policies in some situations. For instance, if they know that they have maybe they've got that casino, one of their partners is doing a big audition in a week or two. They may spend a week or two teaching that casino's policies, but overall they're going to go over what is the majority. So 5s are always cut in stacks of 5 for $25 because it's easy math, right? If you got $100, you just cut out 4 stacks of 5, pretty easy. Same thing with hundreds, and same thing with ones. Now quarters, the greens, we actually cut out in stacks of 4 because it's an even 100. It's a lot easier to do the math. We cut out a whole bunch of stacks. If they were 125, you got to sit there and do some math in your head. If they're all hundreds, it's easy. So blackjack, you're going to cut out 5 and 4. That is not how you're going to cut it out in craps. Also in blackjack, let's say you go even higher, you can say $70. $70, you cut it out 5, 5, and 4. In craps, that's also how you would do it. But when you're down at 10 or less, it's a little bit different. Anything up to that original stack of 5 is going to be cut out that way. If you need $5, obviously you cut out 1. If you need $10, you cut out 2. 15, 3, 20, 4, and 25, 5. But after that, it gets a little different. If we need $30, we don't cut it out like this. That's how they cut out blackjack. This ain't blackjack. It's 3 and 3. And here's the thing. They're touching. Because these stacks are the same height, they are touching. Same number of checks, the stacks are touching. Even if they're different colors. If I was cutting out $18, they would be touching. If I was cutting out 17, there would be a gap. So, this is how we cut out 6 checks. If we cut out 7, it would be like that. It would not be 5 and 2. It would be 2 stacks of 3 and 1. That is the technical proper way. You will see a lot of dealers that will cut it out like this. But the technical proper way would be 3, 3, and 1. Which means that if we needed 8 of them, it'd be like that. If we needed 9 of them, just like that. Okay. So again, if the stacks are the same height, they are touching. A lot of these common procedures and policies come into place because it needs to be something that can be glanced at and understood. Just a quick glance and understand. My eyes are scanning the table, and very rarely does the amount actually register in my head. I just see that it's cut out properly, and my brain just knows, having seen it a couple thousand times or more, that that is correct. I'm not actually adding it up in my head. I just know because they are touching. There's a gap if they are not the same height. Same color checks stay near each other. And largest checks always closest to the box. So if I needed $145, I might cut it out like that. Largest checks always closest to the box. You should, good practice, technical procedure, but one that's not followed very often, you should cut out the largest checks first. So if I needed to cut out, I don't know, $780, technically I should start with the 500, then I should go with the blacks, then I should go with the greens, and then I would go with the reds. Now you notice there's a gap between every single one of those because none of those stacks are the same. If I was cutting out $880, it would look like this because they're the same height, same number of checks. Now, one core skill that all dice dealers must have, you must be able to read stacks 5 or less. You just have to be able to just look at it and read it. Read how much it is. Every dice dealer needs to be able to look at that and know it's 25. I know you guys can't see it from the camera, so it would look like about an angle like that to you if you were standing on the table looking at it. About an angle like that. And dealers need to be able to read stacks of 5, even if they're different colors. Even if they're different colors, dealers need to be able to just look at it and read it. If it's 5 or less checks, you need to be able to just look at it and read it. A sign of an astonishingly weak dealer is one that has to touch every single bet. I know a few. I know a few that have been dealing for 10, 15, 20 years that if they had that, would have to do this. Would have to pick it up and look at it, or pick it up and do that. I know a few that do it just to give themselves time to think. They can look at that and know that's 25, but they're going to go, I don't know why. It's not like there's checks hidden underneath or something. But they have to look to make sure that there's no, nothing hiding in the hole in the table underneath, I guess. No, you need to be able to read it. You need to be able to read 5 checks or less. That is a skill that you develop with time. Skill you develop with time. Now, as far as cutting out payouts go, this area right here is the dealer's working area. We usually will say, the whole cum is technically the dealer's working area, but we usually say that where they have the letters is the dealer's working area. And I actually knew a teacher that would turn this into a phrase. Cut out money every time. Into the cum. Always cut out money. You never, ever, ever go straight from your working stacks to the player. If I needed to pay a player $35, I would never grab pick 2 reds, pick 1 green, and go straight out to the player. Never, ever, ever. First off, in order to pay it properly with one hand, I would actually have to do what's called going hand to hand. I would have to take checks and go both hands to it. Right? Just like doing this. This is called going hand to hand. Never, ever, 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 ever go hand to hand. If you need to switch hands, put it down. Right? That's why I don't understand a dealer that needs to pay, say, $10. Oh yeah, give that player $10 change. I have actually seen dealers that do this because we always pay with our outside hand. So this hand is closest to them, so it's my outside hand on this side of the table. Other side of the table would be reversed. I've seen dealers that will pick it with their inside hand, to then go hand to hand, to then skip the cum entirely and give it to the player. So they violated 3 different procedures all in one move. And it makes no sense to me. I don't understand why you would use this hand instead of using this hand to pick it up. It just, I don't get it. And then we always cut out payouts into the cum. Cut out money every time. Always cut payouts out into the cum. And don't get lazy. If I need to cut out $35, I'm going to cut it out like that. What you will see experienced dealers do is what I call capping the payout. They are going to do it properly, and they're going to bring out the green first. They're also doing it properly if they're paying with 2 hands. Right? There's nothing more frustrating than seeing this. That's just irritating. You've got two hands, use it. But they'll cut out the green, and then they'll just drop the red directly on top of the green, and then bring it out to the player. You'll see experienced dealers do that. And sometimes it's okay. Sometimes those dealers are trusted. If you're a break-in dealer, and by break-in I mean you've been dealing less than 2 years, every single dealer, after they've been dealing for about 8 to 12 weeks, suddenly thinks that they are the greatest dealers in the world, or that they have figured this out. They've figured it out, and that the box should trust them because they know what they're doing. They have figured it out. No, it doesn't work that way. But yes, you will see experienced dealers that will cap basic payouts. Basic payouts.
That doesn't mean you should.
But as a break-in, you never, ever, ever do it. And I'll tell you this as well. The absolute best dealers that I know that have been dealing 20, 30, 40 years, I know some terrible dealers have been dealing that long, but the best dealers that I know still cut out payouts properly to this day. They never got lazy. They never developed any bad habits. But when you cut out money, you use both hands. You cut out the largest checks first. Largest always closest to the box. Cut them out, and you make sure that they are separated so that they can be read. Somebody is always double checking your payout. It's either the box or the stick person, depending on what side of the table. So even the most basic payouts, if I have to cut out $35, yes, I'm trusted to just cap the payout and bring it out. Plus, when I pay it off to the player, the way I pay it out, heeled off, which is the proper way to pay out, behind the pass line. When I hand it off, they can read that right there because it's heeled out, it's heeled off properly. So they can read it there. But on a basic payout, I'm trusted enough to cap a simple bet. They know that I know how to pick it, that I know how to pay it, that I'm not going to make a mistake. But even with those simple payouts, oftentimes I bring it out, move my hands just for the tiniest second, and then stack it back up and cut it out. Now you always hand off payouts with your outside hand, and every payout is always heeled. Always heel your payouts. There's a lot of lazy dealers that just do that. And again, I know dealers that have been dealing for 40 years that still heel off every single payout. Heel off the payouts. It takes absolutely no extra time, literally no extra time to heel off your payouts. So heel off every payout. And when you cut it out, if I needed to cut out $36, I would cut out 25, 10, 1, and I would move my hands just for the tiniest second, because whoever's watching, they again only need to see it briefly. And you notice that I cut out 3 colors all in one motion, but I still drop the largest checks first. So I pick the white, then I pick the red, then I grab the green, red, white. And I'll drop it down, move my hands just for the tiniest second. I would just do a little swirl, and then I would stack it up with my outside hand, and then I heel it off, hand it off to the player, and heel it off. So again, I'm going to cut it out into the cum, move my hands, stack it up, bring it out, heeled off. That is the proper way to cut out payouts. It is never, ever, ever proper to go straight to the players. I've seen dealers do this. That is not proper. Not proper at all. Cut it out, and then hand it off, heeled off. That concludes the basic core skills necessary for every single dealer.